My name is Michael Reeves, and for 15 years, I thought I knew what happiness meant. At 39, I had everything a man could want: a successful career as an architectural engineer, 2 wonderful children, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage to Claire, my college sweetheart. We lived in a house I designed myself in the suburbs of Boston, hosted neighborhood barbecues, and planned our retirement down to which beaches we'd visit. I was the guy who still brought flowers home on random Tuesdays, who remembered anniversaries without reminders, who other couples looked at with envy. "The Reeves have it all figured out," our friends would say. They were wrong. Nobody has it all figured out, especially not when it comes to the human heart. I discovered my world was built on sand one frigid February morning when Claire's phone chimed while she was in the shower. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. I've always respected her privacy, but the screen lit up on the nightstand, and the preview message caught my eye. "Can't wait to feel you again tomorrow. He'll never know." The sender's name was listed simply as J. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Claire didn't work with anyone whose name started with J. Her closest friend Jennifer always appeared in her contacts with her full name. I shouldn't have done it. 15 years of trust should have meant something. But in that moment, some primitive instinct overrode everything else. I picked up her phone and found it unlocked. The first warning sign. Claire always kept her phone locked. I opened the message thread with J and began scrolling. What I found shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. J was Jason, my younger brother. The messages dated back 3 months. Intimate details, plans for meetings when I was traveling for work, discussions about their feelings, their guilt, but their inability to stop. Photos I couldn't bring myself to open. References to a hotel they frequented just outside the city. I sat there, Claire's phone in my trembling hands, as the shower continued to run. My brother, my own flesh and blood, the best man at my wedding, the uncle to my children, the person who'd lived in our guest room for 2 months last year when he was going through a rough patch. When the shower turned off, I carefully placed the phone back exactly as I'd found it and walked downstairs in a daze. I made coffee on autopilot, my mind racing through every interaction between Claire and Jason over the past year. The lingering hugs, the inside jokes, the way they'd volunteered together to pick up supplies for Emma's birthday party, returning an hour later than necessary. All the signs I'd missed because the possibility was too absurd to consider. I remembered last Thanksgiving, when I'd caught them laughing in the kitchen, how they jumped slightly when I walked in. At the time I'd thought they were planning a surprise for me. Now I wondered if they'd been laughing at me. Instead, the oblivious husband and brother, too trusting to see what was happening under his own roof. Claire came downstairs, dressed for her yoga class, kissed my cheek, and said she'd be meeting her friend Samantha for lunch afterward. Another lie. According to the messages, she was meeting Jason at the Lakeside Hotel at noon. "Have fun," I said, amazed at how normal my voice sounded when everything inside me had turned to ash. After she left, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on structural integrity calculations when my own foundation was collapsing. I needed evidence beyond the text messages, something concrete that couldn't be explained away. And I needed time to decide what to do once I had it. I'm an engineer. I solve problems methodically. I assess structural weaknesses, identify failure points, and design solutions. So I approached this betrayal the same way, with precision and careful planning. First, I contacted a private investigator named Diana Roberts, recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a divorce last year. I explained the situation, showed her the photographs I'd taken of the messages, and hired her to document Claire and Jason's meeting that day. "I'm sorry you're going through this," Diana said, her expression professionally neutral. "I'll have photos for you by this evening." Next, I called our family lawyer and scheduled a consultation for the following day. Then I made an appointment with a therapist, knowing I'd need someone objective to help me process whatever came next. As I waited for Diana's report, I found myself walking through our home, seeing it with new eyes. The living room where we'd opened Christmas presents as a family, with Jason sitting on the floor next to Claire, helping Emma with her new tablet. The kitchen where we'd celebrated Jason's law school graduation. The guest bedroom where he'd stayed during his rough patch. Now I wondered if that period of unemployment had been entirely truthful or just an excuse to be closer to Claire. I picked up a family photo from our mantle, the 5 of us at my parents' anniversary celebration last summer. Jason had his arm casually draped over Claire's shoulder, Was that a clue I should have seen? Or was I now scrutinizing every innocent interaction, rewriting history through the lens of betrayal? By evening, Diana had sent me a secured link with dozens of photographs. Claire and Jason entering the hotel together, holding hands in the lobby, kissing in the elevator, time-stamped evidence of their 2-hour stay, their embrace in the parking lot before departing in separate cars. I stared at the images until they burned into my retinas, then closed my laptop when I heard Claire's key in the front door. "How was yoga?" I asked when she walked into the kitchen. "Great," she said brightly. "Samantha's thinking about opening her own studio. We spent lunch talking about possible locations." I nodded, wondering how 15 years of love could evolve into such effortless deception. "Sounds interesting." She moved around the kitchen, preparing snacks for the kids who would be home from school soon. I watched her, this woman I thought I knew better than any, wondering how long she'd been leading this double life. Had she ever loved me? Or had I simply been the stable choice, the good provider, while my brother offered something more exciting? "You're quiet today," she observed, putting a hand on my shoulder. "Everything okay at work?" Her touch, once comforting, now felt like a brand on my skin. I forced a smile. "Just a stressful project. Don't worry about it." That night, as Claire slept beside me, I considered my options. The most obvious was immediate confrontation, show her the evidence, throw her out, file for divorce. But something held me back. Perhaps it was my engineer's mind needing to understand the complete structural failure before demolition, or maybe it was the memory of our children's faces, Emma, 12, and Lucas, 9, who adored both their mother and their uncle. I thought about what a confrontation would look like, the denials that would inevitably come first. Then the minimizing it didn't mean anything, it was just physical, it only happened a few times. Then the blame, I worked too much. I wasn't emotionally available. I didn't notice her anymore. I'd seen the pattern in friends' divorces, heard the justifications people created to live with their choices. No, if I was going to confront them, I wanted the full picture first. I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with. Over the next week, I became someone I never thought I'd be, a spy in my own home. I installed tracking software on Claire's laptop. I checked credit card statements and phone records. I scheduled more late nights at work that were actually spent following her or reviewing the evidence I'd collected. The discoveries came in cruel waves. I learned Claire and Jason had been meeting regularly for at least 6 months, not 3. I found credit card statements showing Claire's purchases at lingerie stores before their meetings. I uncovered a secret email account she used to communicate with him when texting wasn't private enough. There were hotel charges from cities where I'd been attending conferences they'd been together while I was away, working to support our family. There were restaurant bills from places I'd never been, movies I'd never seen with her, shared experiences building a parallel relationship alongside our marriage. But the most devastating discovery came when I checked our family's shared cloud storage and found a folder buried deep in Claire's backup files. It contained screenshots of conversations where they discussed their future after they'd eventually told me the truth. They planned to wait until Lucas started high school in 5 years. They talked about how I deserved better, but how they couldn't deny their feelings. My brother wrote that he'd never meant to fall in love with Claire, but that their connection was undeniable. They were planning to lie to my face for 5 more years while designing their happily ever after behind my back. I read their exchanges late one night in my home office, a glass of whiskey in hand. They discussed whether they should move to another state after everything was settled. Jason worried about how our parents would react. Claire fretted about custody arrangements. They agreed they would be gentle with me when the time came, make sure I didn't feel ambushed. Their concern for my feelings while systematically destroying my life struck me as the cruelest irony of all. Something changed in me that night. The hurt crystallized into something harder, colder. I didn't want revenge, exactly wanted justice. I wanted them to face what they'd done in a way they couldn't minimize or escape. And most importantly, I wanted to ensure my children would be protected. I began to catalog my assets and liabilities, both emotional and financial. I had my health, my career, the love of my children. I had friends who would stand by me, though many were couple friends who might feel torn. I had savings, investments, property. Against these, I weighed what I stood to lose: me marriage, my relationship with my brother, the intact family unit I'd wanted for my children, and the future I'd planned for 15 years. One asset I had that neither Claire nor Jason suspected: time. They believed they had years to prepare for the dissolution of my marriage, to cultivate the perfect narrative, to ensure they emerged as sympathetic figures rather than betrayers. They didn't know that every day they spent together now was evidence building against them. The trap took 3 weeks to plan. I scheduled a fake business trip to Chicago for the following month, a 4-day conference that would give Claire and Jason plenty of time together. I knew from their messages they would use this opportunity for an extended stay at the Lakeside Hotel. I booked the adjoining room in advance under a different name. While preparing for my trip, I met with our lawyer and quietly put things in order, updated my will, secured my financial assets, documented all the evidence. I arranged for my parents to take the children for the weekend of the supposed conference, telling them Claire and I needed a romantic getaway to work on our marriage. "It's about time you two had some alone time," my mother said, hugging me. "You've both been working so hard." If she only knew. I consulted with a child psychologist about the best way to eventually tell Emma and Lucas, should it come to that. I spoke with my company's HR department about potential changes to my benefits. I even met with a realtor to discuss the value of our home, should we need to sell it in a divorce. Each step was calculated, each move designed to ensure that when the moment of confrontation came, I would be prepared for any outcome. The hardest part was facing Jason at our mother's birthday dinner the Sunday before my plan was set to unfold. He hugged me, asked about my upcoming conference, even offered to help Claire with the kids while I was gone, knowing full well he had no intention of actually watching his niece and nephew. "You're a good brother," I told him, meeting his eyes. For a moment, I thought I saw something there, a flicker of shame, perhaps, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Throughout dinner, I watched them, the careful way they avoided eye contact, the practiced distance they maintained in front of family. Yet I caught the momentary touches as they passed dishes, the silent communication and glances when they thought no one was looking. How had I never noticed before? Had I been so consumed with work, with providing for my family, that I'd missed the disintegration of my marriage? "To Mom," Jason said, raising his glass in a toast. "And to family, the most important thing in all our lives." I joined the toast, my smile fixed in place, thinking of the evidence sitting in a secured folder on my laptop. Family indeed. The day of my departure, I kissed Claire goodbye, told her I'd miss her, and drove to the airport. I boarded the plane to Chicago, got off before takeoff, rented a car under a different name, and checked into the Lakeside Hotel hours before Claire and Jason were scheduled to arrive. The hotel room felt surreal, a stage set for the final act of a tragedy I never wanted to be part of. I unpacked methodically. Laptop, evidence files, divorce papers. I ordered room service but couldn't eat. I paced, rehearsing what I would say when the moment came, then abandoning the script, knowing that no words could adequately address what had happened to us. At 3:42 p.m., I heard them arrive in the adjoining room. Claire's laugh, the one I'd fallen in love with in college, the one that still made an appearance at our children's birthday parties, but had become increasingly rare in our day-to-day life. Jason's voice, deeper than mine but with the same cadence, a reminder of our shared DNA. From my adjoining room, I could hear everything: their arrival, their laughter, their intimate moments that cut through me like physical blows. I heard them order champagne, discuss dinner plans, talk about a weekend getaway they were planning for next month, another weekend, when I would supposedly be at a conference. "I've been thinking," Jason said, his voice clear through the thin wall. "Maybe we should tell him sooner, rather than later." My breath caught. Were they having second thoughts? "We agreed to wait," Claire replied, her tone sharpening. "Lucas is too young to understand. And you know how Michael can be. He'll make it difficult. Try to control everything." "I know. But living like this, the sneaking around, sometimes I feel like the worst person alive." "Do you want to stop?" Claire asked, and I could hear the challenge in her voice. A pause. "Number, I love you. I just wish it didn't have to hurt him." "He'll move on," Claire said dismissively. "He's always been resilient. Besides, he loves his work more than anything. Sometimes, I think he wouldn't even notice if I disappeared for a week." Their casual dissection of my character, their confidence in predicting my reaction, it was the final confirmation that the two people who should have known me best had never really seen me at all. At precisely 9 p.m., as they were opening a bottle of champagne according to the sounds filtering through the wall, I initiated the final phase of my plan. First, I sent an email to our entire extended family, including Claire's parents, with select evidence of the affair. I kept it factual and excluded the most explicit details out of respect for our children. "I am writing to inform you of a situation that has forced me to end my marriage," it began. Attached were enough photographs and screenshots to eliminate any doubt. Next, I sent a similar email to the partners at Jason's law firm, where he'd recently been considered for partnership. The firm had a morality clause, and affairs with family members certainly violated it. I wasn't trying to destroy his career, just ensure there were consequences. Finally, I called the room service operator and ordered a special delivery to their suite the complete printed evidence portfolio I'd compiled, along with divorce papers prepared by my lawyer. I listened through the wall as the knock came, as Jason answered, as confusion gave way to shock. I heard Claire's cry of dismay, the rising panic in their voices as they realized their phones were simultaneously exploding with notifications. "My parents, oh God, my parents know," Claire gasped, her voice breaking. "Michael sent them everything." "The firm? How did he?" Jason's voice trailed off, followed by the sound of something shattering against a wall. That was when I knocked on the adjoining door. The silence that followed was absolute. I knocked again, harder. "Who is it?" Jason finally called, his voice strained. "You know who it is," I answered. More silence. Then, the sound of whispered argument. Finally, the lock turned, and the door opened. The look on their faces when they found me standing there, instead of safely in Chicago, I'll never forget it as long as I live. Not out of satisfaction, but because it was the moment I truly understood that the people I'd loved most were strangers to me. Claire stood frozen, her face ashen, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Jason's tie was undone, his expression a mixture of shock and something else, relief perhaps, that the deception was finally over. "We need to talk about custody arrangements," I said calmly. "The children are with my parents. They don't know anything yet, but they will need to be told something." Claire crumpled to the floor, sobbing. Jason stood frozen, his face ashen. "Michael?" he started. I raised my hand. "Don't. There's nothing you can say that I haven't already read in your messages to my wife." I walked past them into their room, noting the champagne, the scattered clothes, the intimate setting they'd created while systematically destroying my family. The evidence portfolio lay open on the bed where the room service attendant had left it. "How long have you known?" Jason finally asked, his voice barely audible. "Long enough," I replied. "Long enough to understand this wasn't a mistake or a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a calculated decision you both made repeatedly, day after day, for months." Claire looked up, her face tear-streaked but suddenly defensive. "You were never there, Michael. Always working, always distracted. Do you know how lonely?" "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't try to make this about what I did or didn't do. You had options, Claire. You could have talked to me, asked for counseling, even filed for divorce if you were that unhappy. Instead, you chose to betray me with my brother." I turned to Jason, the boy who'd followed me everywhere as a child, who'd sworn at my wedding to always have my back. "And you lived in my home. You played with my children. You broke bread at my table, while sleeping with my wife behind my back." "I never meant for this to happen," he whispered, the same words I'd read in his messages to Claire. "And yet, you let it happen, day after day, for months," I replied. "You both did." Claire struggled to her feet, anger now replacing shock. "You had no right to expose us like this to our families, to Jason's firm. This is between us." "No," I said firmly. "The moment you involved my brother, the moment you began planning a future that would destroy our family, it stopped being private. Everything I sent was truth. If you're ashamed of that truth being known, perhaps you should have considered that before you acted." That night, in the hotel, became the dividing line between my old life and whatever would come next. We talked for hours, or rather. They attempted explanations, while I maintained the calm detachment that had gotten me through the past weeks of discovery and planning. They tried every approach I'd anticipated. Claire blamed our marriage's emotional distance. Jason claimed they'd fallen in love, despite trying to fight it. Both insisted they'd planned to do it right when they eventually told me. I listened without comment, the way I'd listen to a contractor explain why a building had structural flaws with professional interest but personal detachment. "What do you want?" Claire finally asked, exhausted, as dawn approached. "I want a divorce," I said simply. "I want primary custody of our children, with reasonable visitation for you. I want our home sold and the assets divided fairly. And I want both of you to stay away until I've had a chance to tell Emma and Lucas in a way that minimizes their pain." "You can't keep me from my children," Claire said, her voice rising. "I'm not trying to, but they deserve better than learning about this from school gossip or family whispers. We will tell them together, with a child psychologist present, once I've had time to process this myself." Jason hadn't spoken for nearly an hour, sitting with his head in his hands. Now he looked up. "The firm called. They've suspended me pending an ethics review." I felt no satisfaction at this news, only a hollow acknowledgement that actions have consequences. "That was your choice, Jason, the moment you decided my wife was acceptable collateral damage for your happiness." The divorce was finalized within 6 months. Claire didn't contest anything once she realized the extent of my evidence. She moved in with her sister temporarily while Jason relocated to the West Coast after being asked to leave his firm. The hardest part was telling Emma and Lucas. We did it together, Claire and I, presenting a united front for perhaps the last time. We emphasized that they were loved, that none of this was their fault, and that while our family structure was changing, our love for them never would. "But why can't you fix it?" Lucas asked, his 9-year-old mind still believing parents could solve any problem. "Sometimes adults make mistakes that can't be undone," Claire explained carefully, avoiding my eyes. "Is it because of Uncle Jason?" Emma asked suddenly, her perceptiveness cutting through our carefully constructed explanation. "Is that why he moved away and doesn't call anymore?" The question hung in the air between us. We'd agreed not to mention Jason's involvement unless directly asked, and now the moment had arrived sooner than expected. "Yes," I said simply. "Your mother and Uncle Jason made some decisions that hurt our family. But that doesn't change how much we all love you." Emma's face hardened in a way no 12-year-old should. "I hate him," she said. "I hate both of them." "No, honey," I said, pulling her close despite her resistance. "Don't carry that hate. It hurts you more than them." The next months were a painful adjustment. We sold the house I'd designed, dividing the proceeds as agreed. I found a smaller home nearby to keep the children in the same schools. Claire rented an apartment 15 minutes away, making our shared custody arrangement manageable. Jason sent letters to the children that remained unopened on their desks. He called on birthdays and holidays, conversations that started awkwardly brief but gradually lengthened as the initial shock faded. Claire and I established a cordial co-parenting relationship, our interactions limited to discussions about the children's needs and schedules. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed form from the acute agony of fresh betrayal to a duller ache that flared occasionally at family events, or when seeing Claire with her new boyfriend, a professor she'd met at a parent-teacher conference. A year has passed since that night at the Lakeside Hotel. The children live with me primarily, with Claire having weekend visitation. She's in therapy, working to rebuild her relationship with Emma, who took the news hardest. Jason sends birthday and Christmas gifts, but hasn't visited a mutual decision until the children are older and can better understand what happened. As for me, I'm learning to trust again, slowly. I've reconnected with old friends, focused on being the father my children need, and even started dating recently fellow parent from Emma's soccer team who knows my story and moves at my cautious pace. Sarah understands my hesitation, my need for transparency. She shows me her phone without being asked, tells me where she's going, and with whom, not because I demand it, but because she knows what I've been through. "You didn't deserve what happened to you," she told me on our third date, "but I'm grateful it led you here." Last month, I received a letter from Jason, the first direct communication we've had since the hotel. He's engaged to a doctor he met in Seattle, building a new life 3,000 miles away. He wrote about his ongoing therapy, his sobriety. Apparently he'd been self-medicating with alcohol for years, and his hope that someday, Perhaps when the children are grown, we might find a way to be in each other's lives again. I haven't decided how to respond. Part of me wants to maintain the wall between us, to protect myself from ever being so vulnerable again. Another part remembers building forts in our childhood backyard, teaching him to ride a bike, standing beside him at our father's funeral. Sometimes people ask if I regret the way I handled things, if a quieter, more private confrontation might have been better for everyone. But I don't. Claire and Jason had orchestrated an elaborate deception that would have continued for years, regardless of the damage it caused. They'd made their choices fully aware of the potential consequences. I made mine with the same awareness. Their affair was conducted in whispers, in deleted messages, in hotel rooms paid for with cash to avoid detection. My response was conducted in the open emails that could be forwarded but not denied, evidence that could be challenged but not dismissed, consequences that could be lamented but not escaped. Engineers understand that sometimes a structure is too compromised to be saved. When the foundation is beyond repair, you don't patch the cracks and hope for the best. You document the failure points, learn from the mistakes, and build something new, something stronger, designed to withstand the storms you now know can come. That's what I'm doing. Building something new, one careful day at a time. Last week, Emma asked if Uncle Jason could call her directly sometimes, instead of going through me. It was the first time she'd mentioned him without anger or prompted by a holiday or birthday. Of course, I told her. He's still your uncle. It's okay to love him. But he hurt you, she said, her young face troubled with adult concerns. I considered my response carefully. Yes, he did. But forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means I'm not going to let it control my life or yours anymore. And I meant it. The trap I set at the Lakeside Hotel wasn't just about exposing their betrayal, it was about freeing myself from it. About ensuring that when the truth finally emerged, it would be on my terms, not theirs, that my children would see a father who stood up for himself with dignity, rather than one blindsided by deception. Claire and Jason thought they were writing the ending to our story. They didn't realize I was already writing a new beginning. As an engineer, I know that the strongest structures are often built on the sites of previous collapses. They incorporate the lessons of past failures, the understanding of what can go wrong, and the determination to build something that will endure. My new life isn't perfect. There are still difficult days, moments when the betrayal feels fresh, times when I look at old family photos and wonder if any of it was real. But those moments grow fewer with time, overshadowed by new memories being made, new foundations being laid. I didn't choose for my marriage to end this way, but I did choose how I responded to its ending. And in that choice, I found a strength I never knew I possessed.